with Baby.
And in New Orleans, you know, that name way before there was rap, before there was a Cash Money Records, that name held weight.
Right.
You know, my mama went to school with him.
Right.
My mama was so scared for me to even be involved with him.
Wow.
You know what I mean? All she would say.
Lil Wayne sued Birdman for $51 million, said he felt like a prisoner, and right in the middle of all that chaos, his tour bus got shot up. Juvenile walked away from a quadruple-platinum streak, took Cash Money Records to court, and claimed the contracts were so foul he wouldn't see real royalties for years. After years of alleged mismanagement, missing money, and broken promises, artists from every era have started speaking up about why their issues with Birdman run so deep. Lil Wayne. Y'all want to talk about a situation that truly crushed hip-hop fans worldwide? We've got to start with the most painful one of them all, the fallout between Lil Wayne and Birdman. For anyone who doesn't know the backstory, Wayne met Birdman when he was just a kid running around New Orleans. Birdman, also known as Baby, stepped in like a father figure, took him under his wing, and signed him to Cash Money Records when Wayne was only around 9 or 11 years old. And let's be real, Wayne has openly talked about how powerful Birdman's name already was in those New Orleans streets. This wasn't just some random label exec trying to make a hit. Birdman's reputation was ringing bells long before the music industry even caught on. In fact, Wayne once shared how his own mother reacted when he signed with Baby, and that reaction alone tells you everything about how serious Birdman's name carried back then.
You know, my mama went to school with him. My mama was so scared for me to even be involved with him.
So now we're talking about a man whose name carried serious weight in the streets before rap was even part of his resume. Lil Wayne's biological father wasn't around, and his stepfather was tragically killed. That's when Birdman stepped in and filled that father figure role. They were so close that photos of them kissing on the lips made rounds online, something Birdman always brushed off as a father-son gesture. That's how tight they were, for real. But fast forward to 2014, and that bond completely shattered. Wayne claimed Birdman was holding his album The Carter V hostage, refusing to pay him the advances he was owed, and essentially keeping him stuck at the label like a prisoner. Back in 2005, Wayne had launched Young Money Entertainment as an imprint under Cash Money, bringing in heavy hitters like Drake and Nicki Minaj under their joint deal. The split? Cash Money owned 51% of Young Money, while Wayne held 49%. On paper, it promised shared profits. In reality, it planted the seeds for a messy fallout. On December 4th, 2014, Wayne jumped on Twitter and let the world know exactly how he felt. "I want off this label and nothing to do with these people. But unfortunately, it ain't that easy. I am a prisoner, and so is my creativity." That tweet shook the culture. We're talking about Lil Wayne, the artist who helped turn Cash Money into a powerhouse during its prime. His longtime manager, Cortez Bryant, even took to Instagram to defend him, saying Wayne had carried Cash Money on his back for over a decade. Things escalated fast. In January 2015, Wayne filed a $51 million lawsuit against Cash Money Records. He claimed they owed him an $8 million advance for the Carter V, another $2 million for completing it, plus royalties from Young Money artists. He also alleged that more than $70 million from a $100 million Young Money advance had been misappropriated, money that was supposed to cover royalties and marketing. Wayne went even further, accusing Birdman and Universal Music Group of conspiracy, claiming his Young Money profits were used to help cover Birdman's reported $70 million debt tied to that same $100 million advance. And if that wasn't enough drama, in April 2015, Wayne's tour bus was shot at in Atlanta after a show. Thankfully, no one was hurt. Investigators later linked the incident to phone records involving associates of Birdman and Young Thug. A Young Thug affiliate, Pee Wee Roscoe, was arrested and sentenced to 10 years. Neither Birdman nor Young Thug was ever charged in connection to the shooting. At the same time, rumors were swirling that Birdman was positioning Young Thug as Wayne's replacement. Thug had even announced a project titled Carter 6 before renaming it Barter 6, which only fueled the speculation. After years of tension, lawsuits, and public fallout, The dispute was finally resolved in 2018. Wayne reportedly received over $10 million from Universal, secured control of his masters, and was officially released from Cash Money. A relationship that once looked like family ended in courtrooms and headlines, and hip-hop hasn't looked at it the same since. The Carter V finally dropped that September and moved 480,000 units in its first week. After all that tension, Wayne and Birdman slowly started patching things up in public. They hugged it out at Club Live. Birdman boasted "me and my son" on Instagram and even offered an on-stage apology at Lil Louisiana Fest. But let's be honest, for a while there, it really looked like that father-son bond had been completely torn apart over money.
So you expect me to take a pay cut in the next city on top of taking a loss? You feel me? That I ain't getting none of my back end? Nah, I need all my money when we go to Cleveland. You feel me? Once I said that, I thought everything was cool, understood. But they had a cake bake for me, I guess. That's what they think. 4 o'clock in the morning, they sent my manager an email saying that I'm terminated. You know, that I was a security threat.
And Turk called that whole security threat excuse out as cap.
Was this the first time you were hearing about a security
threat? Yeah,
risk?
because where was I a security threat before? When you offer me to take less of
Juvenile. And here's the part people forget. Before Wayne's drama even exploded, Juvenile had already shown the world that Cash Money might have had a pattern. Juvenile was one of the label's biggest stars. He dropped 400 Degrees in 1998, and that album went quadruple-platinum. Records like High and Back That Ass Up still ring off at cookouts to this day. Then came the G Code, going double-platinum. Project English hitting platinum, and Juve the Great also going platinum, with Slow Motion featuring Soulja Slim climbing to #1 on the Hot 100. Now, how did Juvenile even land at Cash Money? After splitting from Warlike Records over creative differences, he wanted to level up beyond bounce music. He reportedly ran into Birdman at a bus stop in New Orleans. Birdman liked what he heard when Juvenile freestyled and connected him with producer Mannie Fresh. There was also tension brewing in the city. Cash Money had ongoing beef with Master P's No Limit Records, especially involving Mystical. That rivalry played a role in Juvenile leaning toward Birdman's camp. But by the early 2000s, around 2001 and 2002, Juvenile walked away over money disputes. He claimed he wasn't being paid properly and later found out through his lawyer that the contracts were handled so poorly he wouldn't see royalty checks for years. According to Juvenile, Cash Money was using a criminal defense attorney to manage entertainment contracts, and that just wasn't it. Paperwork was flawed, filings were messy, and artists kept losing out legally. In interviews, Juvenile made it clear it wasn't personal. Wasn't no personal "I don't like this guy," he explained. It was business mismanagement. Still, he accused Birdman and Slim of benefiting way more, while he, Turk, and BG were shorted on their earnings. In 2003, he sued Cash Money for unpaid royalties, reportedly asking for $4 million, though some sources claim the settlement reached $11 million. Juvenile publicly vowed to hit the label where it hurt, financially, and criticized Birdman for damaging his name. Birdman clapped back in interviews, calling Juvenile a failure and saying his solo career flopped without Cash Money. He even claimed Juvenile left threatening voicemails, which started as business tension turned personal fast.
I know Birdman. I know him.
Man, Birdman raised me, bro. You know what I'm saying?
That.
Like, you know, that's like a father figure to me. You know what I'm saying? Him and Slim. You know what I mean? I got the utmost love for him. The utmost, respect for him. Like.
BG explained that when he's in his feelings, he kind of zones out in the booth. It's not calculated, it's emotional. He vents straight from the heart, and whatever's bottled up just spills onto the track. According to him, Birdman understood that because their history is deeper than rap. BG even shared that his mother's house was a stash spot back in the 80s. These relationships didn't start in the studio, they go way back. Turk. Now, if we're talking about someone who has consistently spoken out about issues with Cash Money, we have to mention Hot Boy Turk. He's been publicly going back and forth with Birdman and even with some of his former groupmates for years. And unlike BG, Turk's chapter with Cash Money doesn't feel fully closed. Turk was discovered by Birdman at just 13 years old and joined Cash Money, eventually forming the Hot Boys with the rest of the crew. Their debut album, Get It How You Live, dropped in 1997 and sold around 400,000 copies. Then Guerrilla Warfare in 1999 topped the Billboard R&B hip-hop chart and hit number 5 on the Billboard 200. The group was on fire. But by 2003, Turk exited Cash Money alongside Juvenile and BG, citing unpaid royalties. He claimed he was never compensated for his contributions to roughly 80 records. Then, life took a serious turn. In 2004, Turk was arrested during a drug raid that involved a SWAT shootout. He was sentenced to 14 years and served nearly 9 before being released in 2012. And here's what really bothered him. When he came home, Birdman didn't publicly acknowledge his release. No chain, no big welcome back moment, especially compared to when BG returned and received a Cash Money chain and reportedly $1 million. That silence, it spoke loudly. In 2015, Turk filed a lawsuit against Cash Money seeking rights to his music and more than $1 million in damages, arguing that the contracts were void due to poor accounting practices. The case was settled out of court for about $1.3 million. Turk later described it as more of a severance package, and notably, it did not include his publishing rights. He briefly re-signed with Cash Money in 2016, but nothing substantial came from it. The real tension resurfaced recently during talks of a Hot Boys reunion. Turk was expected to be part of the 2025 30th anniversary tour, but things unraveled quickly. So what exactly happened when Turk refused to take a pay cut?
So A said one thing he respects about Birdman is the hustle, and that's one thing everybody has got to respect about Birdman. Can't nobody say they out-hustled Birdman from the very start. Hey, we know what he allegedly did back in his teens and stuff like that. He was outside in them streets, all of that stuff. Been documented and confirmed, you feel me? Now, fast forward, he built Cash Money from the ground up with his brother, had a bunch of local artists and made them national artists. He took those national artists and made them global superstars. We're talking about Wayne, Drake, Nicki Minaj, Juvenile, BG, Turk, the Hot Boys. Mannie Fresh made him one of the greatest producers.
And Turk wasn't letting that security threat excuse slide either. He flat out called cap on the whole thing. Then things got even messy. At the Cash Money versus No Limit versus battle in October 2025, Birdman grabbed the mic and publicly took a shot at Turk from the stage, calling him little and saying, "We gon' fuck with you when we want to." No filter, no subtlety. Meanwhile, Turk wasn't even in the building. He was at home hosting his own watch party because he didn't get an invite. And he didn't stay quiet. Turk fired back online, even taking shots at BG, calling him anti-BG and clowning the outfit he wore during the verses. This whole situation between Turk and the Cash Money camp is chaotic. Turk sued promoters for $300,000 and they responded with a $12 million countersuit, accusing him of sabotaging a tour. That's not minor tension, that's full-blown legal warfare. And as of now, this beef is nowhere near settled. Mannie Fresh. Now, if we're talking about the architect of the Cash Money sound, you have to give Mannie Fresh his flowers. He produced virtually every major hit from the late 90s and early 2000s run. Back That Ass Up, Still Fly, Go DJ, Bling Bling. That signature, bounce-heavy, bass-driven New Orleans sound, that was Mannie. He joined Cash Money around 1993 and helped shape the label's identity. And he wasn't just behind the boards. He was one half of the big timers alongside Birdman. Their album Hood Rich went platinum in 2002. Early on, the partnership looked solid. Mannie even credited the label for teaching artists an independent blueprint for financial success in hip-hop. But by 2005, Mannie Fresh walked away. The reason? Financial disputes and creative freedom. He wanted to branch out into other genres, rock, gospel, more than just hip-hop. But deeper than that, he felt the compensation didn't match the impact. He said he was clearing about $50,000 per beat, yet he noticed a disconnect between the flashy lifestyle around him and the numbers he was shown, and later described it as homeboy business gone wrong. when friends and family fill professional roles without the proper expertise. In his words, your friend can't be your manager or your lawyer, and if a company doesn't want you to have solid representation, maybe that's not the company for you. Birdman didn't take his departure lightly. In interviews around 2006, he questioned Mannie's loyalty. Mannie sued Cash Money and settled later that year for an undisclosed amount. He managed to retain some of his masters, but even by 2010, he admitted he was still chasing royalties. He called the whole ordeal a tough lesson about trusting partners with your money. After leaving, Mannie linked up with Def Jam South and produced for Young Jeezy, calling that 2005 period a turning point after what he described as a dark, uncertain chapter. And then there's another name that always comes up in this conversation: Gilly the Kid. Now this one right here, extra spicy. Gilly the Kid has been saying for years that he ghost wrote for Lil Wayne in the early days. According to Gilly, he helped sharpen Wayne's flow and had input on the Carter and other projects. On the flip side, Cash Money, Birdman, and Wayne have consistently denied every bit of that. Gilly was actually signed to Cash Money briefly in the early 2000s, but left in 2003 over money issues. He claims he was promised a $200,000 signing bonus, but ended up tangled in unfair publishing splits and what he describes as shady business practices. Birdman has always stood firm on his version. In 2023, he made it crystal clear: "I ain't never made $1 off Gilly, and he for sure ain't never wrote one rhyme for Lil Wayne." That's a direct denial, no gray area. The tension didn't just stay in interviews, it simmered for years through diss records and street DVDs. In 2006, Lil Wayne took shots at Gilly on Problem Solver from the mixtape Like Father, Like Son. Gilly clapped back heavy, popping up on Cheddar DVD Volume 6 with a string of accusations. He claimed he loaned Wayne jewelry for videos, gave business advice, and called out what he labeled fake behavior inside the Cash Money circle. Then, in 2023, things flared up again. Birdman jumped on Clubhouse with Whack 100 and said he lost all respect for Gilly after allegedly seeing Beanie Sigel slap him in a Philadelphia store. According to Birdman, Gilly was strapped and surrounded by people, but didn't respond. Birdman painted it as Gilly backing down, basically saying, "You're not like that." Gilly didn't let that slide. He responded in a video questioning why Birdman waited decades to bring it up. "Why Birdman wait so long to say something? It took you 25 years to get some heart," he said. He also flexed his current position, claiming, "I'm bigger than Baby. I generate more money than that right now." Gilly flat out called Birdman a coward and dismissed the Beanie Sigel story as made up. But here's the twist. Despite all the smoke, Gilly has admitted he still respects Birdman's hustle. So even in the middle of all that tension, there's still a thin line between beef and respect. And in hip-hop, that line is never simple.
At 48, Gilly has made it clear he's focused on family and legacy, not pointless drama. He's framed the tension as old smoke, not an act of war. And even with all the back and forth, Gilly still admits one thing: Birdman's business hustle is undeniable. That's just facts. Pusha T. Now let's talk about a beef that's been quietly burning for over 2 decades. Pusha T versus Birdman and the entire Cash Money camp. This one is layered. It reportedly started back in 2002 when Birdman allegedly didn't properly pay the Neptunes for producing What Happened to That Boy, which featured clips Pusha T and his brother No Malice. After that, Pharrell Williams allegedly refused to work with Cash Money again. And since Pusha was closely aligned with Pharrell through the Star Trek circle, he took that situation personally. That moment planted the seed. Then the style tension kicked in. Lil Wayne began rocking Bape, a look Clips and Pharrell had popularized through their relationship with brand founder Nigo. In 2006, when Wayne appeared on the cover of Vibe magazine dressed in Bape, Clips dropped Mr. Me Too, featuring Pharrell. Lines like, "Wanna know the time? Better clock us, Nigo," and references to biting styles from shoes to watches were widely seen as subtle shots at Wayne. Wayne didn't brush it off quietly. In a December 2006 Complex interview, he downplayed Clips' impact, saying, "I don't see no Clips. They had to do a song with us to get hot." He even mocked Pharrell, questioning his credibility and influence. But things escalated majorly in 2012 when Pusha T released Exodus 23-1. On that record, he took aim at Cash Money's layered contract system. Contract all fed up, I guess that means you all fed up. You signed to one nigga, the signed to another nigga, the signed to three. Many interpreted that as a direct jab at Drake's Young Money, Cash Money universal structure under Birdman. Lil Wayne reacted immediately, tweeting, "Fuck Pusha T and anybody that love him," before dropping the diss track Ghoulish. Pusha later went on Hot 97 and called the record trash, no hesitation. And the tension hasn't cooled. As recently as July 2025, Pusha T was still throwing lyrical shots on Damage Control with Wale. One line, "Bruised egos, man, you might sue," was widely interpreted as referencing Drake's lawsuit against Universal Music Group. That's over 20 years of consistent smoke aimed at the Cash Money camp. And Pusha T, he's not backing down. He even told GQ the lawsuits cheapen rap battles. Rick Ross. Now let's talk about Rick Ross. There was a time when Ross and Birdman were tight, really tight. They even worked on a joint project called The H back in 2008, which eventually dropped as a mixtape in 2013, hosted by DJ Khaled. The chemistry made sense. Ross repping Miami, Birdman holding down New Orleans, Southern power moves. But things shifted when Ross watched how Birdman handled the public fallout with Lil Wayne. That didn't sit right with him. In 2015, Ross released Color Money, which many saw as indirect shade toward the Cash Money situation. Then in 2016, he took things to social media, poking fun at a possible Birdman-Wayne reunion, and even sending a bottle of Belaire Rosé to Charlemagne the God after Birdman's infamous "put some respect on my name" moment on the Breakfast Club. The climax came in March 2017 when Ross dropped "Idols Become Rivals" on his album Rather You Than Me, rapping over a soulful Chris Rock sample. On that track, Ross sounded genuinely disappointed, spitting, "You would give us self-esteem and motivate our drive, but was in our pockets by the time we count to 5. That wasn't just a diss, that was personal. Tyga eventually dropped his lawsuit in April 2019. There was no settlement. After negotiations fell apart, and with Birdman pushing back, citing unrecouped advances, both sides walked away without reaching an agreement. The case was closed without prejudice, and since then, things haven't really escalated. Although in 2022, Birdman did revisit the situation publicly, challenging Tyga's claim that he was owed $12 million. NBA YoungBoy. Now let's get into the most recent chapter, NBA YoungBoy. Around 2018, Birdman took the Baton Rouge rapper under his wing, calling him the biggest artist out and even a potential billion-dollar star. He drew comparisons to Lil Wayne and treated YoungBoy like the next Louisiana heavyweight. In 2021, they dropped a joint project, From the Bayou, blending their shared roots and sound. But here's where it gets interesting. Lil Wayne himself seemed to send a subtle warning. On the 2020 track, Multiple Flows with Lil Uzi Vert, Wayne rapped, "I had told YoungBoy to watch out for old heads," which many interpreted as a quiet reference to Birdman's history of financial disputes. Then in June 2024, YoungBoy released Tears of War, which he described as his final song recorded before police raided his home in April. And the lyrics, they raised eyebrows. He rapped, "Knew that Stunner never loved me, should have listened to the Carter," referencing Birdman's nickname, Stunner, and possibly nodding to Lil Wayne's earlier warning. He also mentioned Floyd Mayweather and hinted at feeling misled by certain people around him. XXL reported that YoungBoy openly claimed Birdman never truly cared about him. Fan reactions were split. Some said the track was fire, but not a full-on diss, pointing out that only a few lines directly targeted Birdman, mixed in with YoungBoy's usual raw emotion. But here's the twist. By mid-2025, everything shifted. In August, YoungBoy and Birdman reunited in New Orleans. YoungBoy was seen wearing a bulletproof vest, tossing money into the crowd alongside Birdman, a public sign that tensions had cooled. By September, Birdman joined YoungBoy on the Make America Slime Again tour, which reportedly grossed over $70 million. Birdman explained his presence simply, "I'm not about to let my little bro fuck the money up." In October, they performed 100 Rounds live together for the first time and dropped another collaborative track featuring Herm the Black Sheep. At the Cash Money vs. No Limit Versus battle, Birdman gave YoungBoy a public shout-out, declaring, "As long as I'm alive, Cash Money ain't never gonna die. Shout out my nigga NBA YoungBoy." Birdman has also expressed confidence in YoungBoy's future, even predicting a potential $200 to $300 million deal and calling him a special talent. So for now, that situation seems smoothed over. But the fact that YoungBoy went through the same cycle, feeling betrayed, speaking out, then reconciling, adds to a pattern people can't ignore when it comes to Birdman. And with that, we've reached the end of this breakdown. For more deep dives like this, tap the cards on your screen. Now, let's talk about BG, a certified New Orleans legend. One of the original Hot Boys, signed to Cash Money at just 12 years old in 1992, alongside an 11-year-old Lil Wayne. He gave us Bling Bling, a record so impactful it literally added a word to the dictionary. Albums like Chopper City and The Ghetto in 1999 helped define that late 90s era. His work played a role in Cash Money securing that massive $30 million distribution deal with Universal Records in 1998. But like the others, BG left in the early 2000s over money issues. He claimed he received nothing for contributing to around 80 songs and said he never got royalty checks for his pre-1998 albums. In 2001, BG, Juvenile, and Turk all exited the label, alleging shady accounting and unpaid royalties. Lawsuits were filed, settlements happened, and by 2003 they briefly returned, but the resentment didn't just disappear. Then, life took a serious turn. BG was arrested in 2009 on gun charges, sentenced to 14 years in 2012, and ultimately served 11 before being released on September 5, 2023. During his time behind bars, he reportedly felt unsupported by the label, which only added to lingering frustration over unpaid money. When he came home, though, Birdman was there to greet him, gifting him a Cash Money chain and reportedly $1 million. But here's where it gets interesting. While processing everything, BG had actually recorded a diss aimed at Cash Money. In January 2024, he appeared on Finesse 2 Times Gangstafied and even threw shots at Lil Wayne for not sending money while he was locked up. Fans thought that would spark a major fallout inside the Cash Money camp. But according to BG, there's a reason Birdman let that diss slide, and what he said next surprised a lot of people.